Popular video sharing app TikTok had a stormy weekend after U.S. President Donald Trump said Friday that he wants to ban the Chinese app from American shores over security concerns. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says there are plans to make a move on other Chinese tech companies in the near future. So, is TikTok a threat? Can it be banned? Who's next? And what does that mean for Chinese tech companies doing or thinking of doing business in the U.S.? To talk about this, I'm joined from Bangkok by Professor Jeffrey Townsend, head of the Jeff Asia's Tech class, from Beijing, Flora Liu, founder of Joyview Education, and from the U.S., Jesse Appel, director of the U.S.-China Comedy Center. That is the topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Zhou Yue. Let me start with you, Jeffrey. U.S. President Donald Trump said he was looking to ban TikTok via executive order, but was also mulling other options. First of all, can an executive order be used this way, and what are the other options?
Right. It's been a little bit confusing because this all happened over the weekend. It was going to be Saturday, then Sunday, then Monday, then Microsoft, now September. So it's kind of all changing day by day. But I think the two actions people are kind of paying attention to, potential actions, the first would be to use CFIUS, which is sort of a U.S. intergovernment committee that reviews mergers before they're approved. And they could, in theory, go back and reverse the acquisition of Musical.ly by TikTok in 2017. And that wouldn't ban TikTok. It would basically say it can't be owned by a Chinese company. So that would be kind of one move. The other one people are pointing to is the entity list, which we know Donald Trump likes to use this, right? He used it on Huawei, ZTE, and that effectively forbids U.S. companies from working with that company. So it's not an outright ban, but it would mean things like Android couldn't list the app, or the Google Play Store couldn't list the app. So that would also be a pretty big deal. I mean, both of those are in play, and, you know, beyond that, we don't know. I'm sure the lawyers are all ramped up. I'm sure ByteDance has a team of great lawyers on the ground in the U.S. watching this, because especially if he uses the, you know, CFIUS or something, you would expect a legal challenge. That's pretty standard for the U.S. So everyone's kind of waiting, I think, and a lot of lawyers are doing a lot of billing right now.
Let's also look at the rationale behind the decision. The White House accusation is that TikTok is controlled by or share data with the Chinese government, so posing a threat to U.S. national security. This is not much different from what they did with Huawei, but TikTok is a social media platform used mainly by young people, those fun videos. National security?
Yeah, I think the national security argument...
Jeffrey first, please.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is somewhat of a long walk, logically, to get from teenagers dancing to national security. I mean, it's a bit of a little stretch logic-wise there. I think there's probably two issues playing out here. One is this data privacy, national security-ish, and then the other is just media platforms from the West being in China versus from China being in the West. And it does seem to be imbalanced. And so it's almost more like the trade argument, where that was similar then, that trade had to be a little more fair. I think that second argument is the one that maybe has a little more teeth to it.
Flora, do you want to weigh in on there?
Yes. Yeah. I think Donald Trump is making a big fuss over TikTok mainly because the majority users of this app is aged between 18 to 24, which are the prime age of first-timer voters. You know, so he's afraid of the so-called voters manipulation by TikTok.
But why does he believe that those TikTok users are going to vote against him if this is out of political consideration?
if you look at other social media platforms, they do not worship people. Rather, they would like to see the real human side of people, especially the short videos platforms like TikTok. So people would like to see the human side of the president. They would like to see, what is behind this politician mask. I don't think Donald Trump is doing such a great job building his relationship with Generation Z and millennials. So I think this is a potential threat to him.
But Flora, there are aspects of TikTok that are concerns, causes for concerns. For example, the way it uses copies the users put on their clipboards. It might be a reason to ban the use in U.S. military and working in the security places. Do you think those are legitimate grounds for banning its use all across the board?
I'm not a politician, and I'm not working in the security department, so I probably do not have a say in this. But I do have many questions as a fan of TikTok and ByteDance. So my question is, we are widely using Microsoft products here in China, like Bing, like LinkedIn, and many other Microsoft products. But we have never banned a Microsoft product or the Chinese branch here in China. Neither have we ever forced Microsoft to sell its branch in China to a local Chinese company. And why is there such urgence to force TikTok to be sold to Microsoft? Why 45 days? Why right before the presidential election? I only have the questions. I do not have an answer.
So, Jeffrey, do you want to respond to that? If Chinese can use Microsoft and Microsoft does not pose a national security threat to China, why should TikTok be thought of the same way?
I mean, the way I kind of break this down is the U.S. and China are clearly resetting their relationship, as has been the last 20 years. And it started in trade. And then it kind of became a tech question, right? Suddenly it became about Huawei, not about soybeans. And I think really what we're doing now is we're kind of going to the next wave of this, which is about media, information, and data. And, we're kind of raising these questions of like, look, where is the data stored? Should cloud storage all be domestic? Who can broadcast media into whose country and why? And I think that's really what we're sort of, TikTok, unfortunately, is a little bit of caught in the middle of this, in many ways the same way like Huawei was kind of caught in the middle of a bigger discussion about telco and technology. And I don't think people quite know what they're doing yet. And President Trump in particular, sometimes he just does stuff, right? Sometimes he says stuff and he does stuff, and then he changes his mind. So you got to kind of roll with the punches with him. But I think that's really what we're seeing, is we're sort of seeing the U.S. and China reassess media, information, and data between the two countries and what each side is comfortable with.
Yeah.
And the U.S. has kind of changed its position a little bit, that, yeah, even if they don't quite have a great reason for it yet.
So let's look at how successful TikTok has.
If I could add in a question.
Jesse, you want to weigh in?
Hi there. I just wanted to chime in while I had the chance, as we're talking about media and the resetting of the relationship. My relationship to TikTok may be a little bit different. I use the TikTok platform as part of my comedy routines. I have 2 million followers on the Chinese half of it. The Western half of it is set off. The content on the Western half can't get into the Chinese half, and vice versa. But
probably going to be more so.
My perspective on this is an entertainer. Yeah, well, this is the problem. Is my perspective as an entertainer is I want to make people laugh. I'm here to try to bring people a little bit of joy in their life. Goodness knows we need it. And we seem to be putting up walls between each other that are making it difficult to do that. So I think as far as regular people are concerned, whether those are people like my brother who loves using TikTok here in America, or whether it's people like my fans in China that use TikTok in China, being able to go across those borders digitally is good for people. I think the question for the American government is that, in an ideal world, I think that TikTok should be able to work in America. And in an ideal world, we should be able to have Netflix, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, BBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, all of the American platforms would also be able to share over in China. So I feel like it's less of a, it does feel like it's less of a very specific TikTok reason and more of a boiling over of frustration from that exchange not going back into China and years of the exchange coming into America.
Yeah, well, that comes from the fact that TikTok has been very successful in the U.S. Flora, how important and relevant is TikTok to young people in the U.S.? Flora?
Yes. Since I use the Chinese version of TikTok, which is Douyin, I actually do not know how popular TikTok is in the U.S., but I do know that on last Wednesday, as a revenge to Donald Trump's potential ban on TikTok, a lot of TikTok fans actually commented on very negative reviews on Donald Trump's campaign app. Right now, there are already 700 negative reviews under the app, and the app is only one-star app. So this could, in some way, shows how popular TikTok is among teenagers in the U.S.
And Jesse, you also a creator.
I mean, I would add to that.
On social media platforms. Yes. What would it mean for TikTok users and creators if it is banned?
Well, it would be really bad for the users and the creators because people that create content are really at the bottom of the internet feeding chain right now. The money is in the companies and the aggregation of lots of people's free labor, and then the performers do it because they love it. Whether that's just me taking a video of my daily life, or whether it's somebody like me that's made a career of trying to reach out and build an audience. The creators are always in a very difficult position. They don't have access to the algorithms that run the app. They don't have access to the audience unless it goes through the app. And so the creators are always in this precarious position. If something happens to the app, their livelihood could be affected. So it's a challenging crisis, and I think one of the reasons, especially that Jeffrey was talking about, that why this is such an interesting question, is that TikTok is different from a film company that created a story that Americans love and then shared it in a theater. TikTok's product is Americans creating content for Americans, or rather we could say non-Chinese creating content for non-Chinese, because the Chinese app is in its own little bubble. So the challenge of this is that its success really isn't because it understands the American storyteller, per se, or understands the American audience. It's that it has found a way to get Americans to tell stories to themselves. And so their impact, on one hand, that seems like it should be like less of a national security impact because Americans are choosing what to share with Americans. On the other hand, because it's a tech platform first, it's an algorithm first and videos really second. If that algorithm were to be changed, the nature of censorship is you never know what you don't see. So if there were to be editing done to what videos go on the platform, we would need really trust in order to solve that problem. And unfortunately, it seems like we're in a space where we have very little trust between parties right now.
All right. We've also collected some opinions and ideas on the banning of TikTok on the internet. Let's take a look what some of them have been saying. Quite some of the pieces are saying, well, what is the implications for the ban? Brooklyn Dad Defiant said, by banning TikTok, I think Trump has just solved the problem we've been trying to figure out, how to motivate the teens to vote. He has awakened a sleeping giant. So, Jeffrey, do you think this will probably work against Trump because he has awakened sleeping giants? Those young people who are using TikTok will probably turn out to voice their opinions politically.
No, not really. Teens don't vote. It's just they don't. Every election cycle, everyone's like, oh, they're going to vote, and then they never show up. They're busy having fun and doing other stuff. So,
but they've never been taken away such an important social media tool before, have they?
No, I mean, there's always a first for everything. I mean, but usually the thing that these politicians are good at, they don't understand the technology at all if you watch the congressional hearings last week. They do understand political calculation. So I suspect they've taken apart that question quite well.
Okay.
But I don't know.
What about you, Jesse? Do you think those young teens will feel so frustrated they will probably vote for the very first time in their life?
Well, I think you will probably see higher voter turnout from young people than in previous elections. That's just a feeling I have from being on the internet and seeing what people have done. Again, TikTok had a interesting moment with the president's campaign rally in Tulsa, where fans of actually K-pop music coordinated online to flood the applications for tickets and wound up causing a huge problem. I think that's probably in the back of the president's mind, or in the front of the president's mind, when he's thinking about this ban. But I think that ultimately, I really do feel like trying to take these mile-high political things and put them onto TikTok and make it make sense doesn't really express what I feel is going on. I feel there's a lack of trust between the different countries right now, and the fact that platforms kind of exist in a WeChat or a Tengxun or iQIYI. These platforms only exist in China. They don't really exist outside of the country. And this is the first instance we've had of a Chinese tech and media company having success outside of China. And so I think a lot of the problems we're seeing, they look like they're TikTok problems, but they're actually just problems that we haven't had to deal with because these companies have not had success outside of China, and we haven't dealt with them in China because they've just been flat banned for years and years and years. I mean, my ideal universe would be one where I could, as a performer, make something and just put it out into the world, and Chinese people could see it, and Americans could see it, and British could see it, and Indians could see it. And we could live in this world where the walls are a little bit less high. Unfortunately, we seem to be going the opposite direction. But again, who loses? It's the people that we're trying to make laugh. I'm trying to make people laugh. The people that never see the comedy are the people that are losing.
But unfortunately, this is not the ideal world we're looking at. Actually, India banned 59 apps from China and is considering bans on further 200 more than that. On Sunday, Mike Pompeo also made it clear that TikTok might not be the last Chinese app to be banned in the U.S. He has talked about WeChat, for example. So, Jeffrey, is this just the beginning of an end of a relationship between China and the U.S. tech companies?
I don't think it's necessarily tech companies. I think it's this sort of third wave I mentioned. I think it's media and information companies. That is really kind of the next question. And WeChat would fall into that category, media, information, and communication. WeChat is on the short list, I think, of what Pompeo was talking about there. But there are definitely others. So TikTok, almost to its credit, is on this list because it's so successful, because it's such a good program. It is, I mean, you have to kind of hand it to ByteDance. They created a spectacularly great media product. People love it. Everybody loves it. I love it. I use it. I don't even use Facebook. I use TikTok all the time.
Okay.
And it's kind of like the more successful
the
they
user
are,
profile
the
is
more this
not
became a problem for them.
This is still developing fluidly, and ByteDance founder initially said the company wasn't going to sell their U.S. operations, and Sunday it agreed to divest its operations in the U.S. And Microsoft has confirmed it is in negotiations to purchase TikTok's U.S. and Canadian, Australian, New Zealand operations. First of all, Flora, why does a company like Microsoft want to buy TikTok? What is your take?
Because it makes total sense for Microsoft to buy TikTok, because Microsoft has always have been weak in its social media. If Microsoft acquires TikTok, it will gain more competitive advantages when competing with Facebook and Google. And also, Microsoft has always been very profitable. It has enough cash to buy TikTok. What's in its favor is that Donald Trump has put a 45-day deadline on the purchase, or TikTok will be shut down. So this is actually to the advantage of Microsoft. It gives them the upper hand of getting a good deal in the negotiation. I suspect that they will able to buy TikTok lower, much lower than their market value.
And do you think those competitors in the U.S. already, Facebook has its version and there are others, they're happy to see that TikTok is about to draw out of the American market? Flora?
Yeah, definitely. Why not? They have one less strong competitor. They're definitely happy to see that. But in the long run, I don't think this is very helpful to the U.S. tech ecosystem, because there will be less competition, and those companies could, slow down their development because of complacency.
And Jeffrey, there is a time window of opportunity for this acquisition to happen, because Trump basically has permitted Microsoft to pursue the application on the condition that a deal can be reached within 45 days. Why 45 days?
Something happened in the last couple of days. I mean, everyone was talking about Sunday, Monday, something's going to happen. And then at some point there was a phone call between President Trump and CEO of Microsoft. And then out of that, then we heard 45 days. It's unclear what that is. I mean, this is actually a complicated deal. I mean, you're probably talking $30 billion. People are saying $50 billion.
So it normally takes that amount of time to have the negotiations.
It's a big, I mean, this is a lot of money. There's teams of lawyers, teams of bankers. Everyone's working 24/7. It's a complicated company. There's a lot of technology, customers. So, it's, nothing like that happens in a couple of days. So it looks like they gave them a window of time. But we'll see. I mean, this is all in the last 5 days. So 5 days from now, we might be talking about something else.
And also, it will...
suspect,
yeah, Flora?
Sorry. I suspect that Donald Trump just wants to paint himself as being tough on China to win more votes for his election. It's 45 days right before the presidential election. And also, like I said, it might give Microsoft the upper hand in negotiation. It's only 45 days. Take it or leave it, Even for selling a small, tiny company like Joyview would take more than 45 days, let alone such a big company like TikTok. 40 days, 45 days, are you kidding me?
And Jeffrey, what do you think will happen to the operation of TikTok? It is acquired by Microsoft. It will be run separately from TikTok in other markets and in the Chinese market. What will happen to the users if they are not able to access contents from other parts of the world?
Right. I mean, one of the questions with this is, I mean, the algorithms and the tech are all in Beijing. The users, sales, marketing, advertising, that's in the U.S. And, the reports we were getting out of these discussions was that Microsoft didn't want to just buy the U.S. They wanted to buy Canada, Australia, not the UK for some reason, which I didn't understand. So there's more on the table here than just the U.S. and what parts you can carve out and what parts you can't. It's a little... This is, if you're negotiating for TikTok, this is your worst nightmare, because you're basically negotiating against someone where the alternative, if you don't reach a deal, is you get shut down. I mean, that's not much of a negotiating stance. So, it's not a great week for TikTok in terms of working out, a reasonable deal.
But also for some Chinese investors and businesses, it is probably a very clear message out there. What does it mean for Chinese businesses? Gary Hofbauer said Trump's proposal reminded him of medieval kings who oversaw salt monopolies. He said, if you wanted to mine some salt, you put your money in the royal treasury. It seems Trump is doing something unprecedented before. He's driving out a foreign company out of the American market, and he's trying to collect taxes from the company who acquire that foreign company. What kind of message does this send to the rest of the world, Jeffrey?
We're not totally sure yet what this is. Definitely there is sort of a change in the landscape that media companies within the U.S., the ownership of those is going to be more politically sensitive than it was before. Most investors know where you can operate comfortably and where is more politically sensitive, whether that's in the U.S. or China or India or wherever. This was a sector that was not considered politically sensitive 5 years ago. Buying a Hollywood studio today would probably get you a CFIUS review. That wouldn't have been the case 5 to 10 years ago. So the landscape is shifting. Investors are usually pretty big boys and girls. They know how to roll with these. Probably the group that's going to get hit here, maybe not hit, but is at risk, is the content creators who have built nice audiences on TikTok and really they're not at the table. I mean, they're just not at the table. They're reading in the news what's going to happen to all this work.
If I could.
Jesse?
Yeah, and if I could, and as the content creator, if I could put in a couple words there, I think it's very frustrating because it's sort of, we're almost like the essential workers of the internet. The people that make the content are the people that are entertaining everybody else, and they have not been the people that have been making the $30 billion in acquisition sales, and they're not the people that have been in charge of the policy. So as one of the content creators at the table, it's important to remember this. I mean, the governments will sometimes fight who wins. Sometimes one government wins, sometimes another government wins, but everybody who watches content and everybody that creates content loses in a world where we can't freely share. And then, if I could say one final thing in terms of, I've sensed a thread of tension in this conversation between sort of, China and the U.S. and it's tit for tat. They do one thing, we do another thing. I would love to see some lessening of the tensions, just personally as a content creator, but also just as somebody that has life in both countries. And so again, there's a lot of play that China can do. I mean, China's kept out Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all of the Western platforms. If this is really a big issue that China wants to deal with, I would love to see an opening. And maybe an opening like that, it's not a guarantee, but maybe an opening like that would lead to better treatment for companies like TikTok and Huawei
Flora,
and the Chinese
maybe
tech
you want to
companies
respond to that, because the Chinese Foreign Ministry has also said the U.S. move to ban TikTok bears no resemblance to China's restrictions on Twitter, Facebook, and Google, YouTube.
I think their stance is that we require all foreign companies who are doing business in China to play by the rule book of Chinese government. Like LinkedIn is playing by the rules, so LinkedIn gets to stay, but Google is not following the rule book of the Chinese government. However, invasive as it may sound to the Westerners, the rules, but anyway, they're not sticking to the rules. That's why they have to leave. So I guess that's the stance of the Chinese official who made the comment. But I agree that I would love to see a more open internet, where youths from different countries can share laughter and share stories together.
But realistically, we're probably going to live in a tech Cold War. And what do you think might users
I don't know. I mean, if I could just say one thing. If I could say one thing in terms of the tech Cold War, I mean, this is the media. We're on the TV right now. I mean, we have the choice of what the narrative is going to be. Obviously, there's danger of that sort of thing happening, but we have the ability as well to tell people that it's not necessarily going to be that way.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Thank you, Jeffrey and Flora. You've been watching Dialogue here on CGTN. I'm Zhu in Beijing. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.